Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the ITSM crowd. Today I'm joined by special guests John Morley and Matt Hoey, and our topic is two-speed transition. My name's Claire Agutter. I'm going to be the host for today, and we're going to just chat about the topic, what it means for organisations, and look at maybe some examples of where you can look at your own transition capability. So the first thing we're going to do is some introductions. So John, if you'd like to say hello, tell us a bit about yourself and where you work at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Morning, everyone. I'm John Morley. I'm Service Delivery Manager at a managed service provider in Nottingham in the UK called Little Fish, supporting historic England and English heritage. I run the service desk and end user compute services for that customer. I'm also the Vice Chair of the itSMF UK's Transition Special Interest Group, or SIG for short. And one of the things I've been involved in, particularly with Matt over the last couple of years or so, is producing content, white papers, speaking at conferences and so on. Looking forward to today's topic.
Thank you very much. And Matt, tell us a bit about yourself.
Thanks, Claire. Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Hoey. I'm the Change and Service Quality Manager at Grant Thornton, the financial services company. Interesting job title. My primary focus is change, but I do get involved in lots of other stuff in the service management system from a quality aspect. So it's quite an interesting role. I'm also the chair of the Service Transition SIG, which John's just been talking about. And yeah, really looking forward to talking about two-speed transition this morning.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, both of you. So as I said, my name's Claire Agutter. I'm the lead tutor for ITSM Zone. I will be watching Twitter during today's session. So if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask Matt and John while we're live for the next 30 minutes. And if you use the hashtag ITSM crowd, we'll be watching that and monitoring that so we can put your questions directly to the panel. So the first thing I think we need to do is explain the concept. So I think if I can ask you both first to just tell us a little bit about what we mean when we say two-speed transition, please.
Okay, Matt, do you want me to tackle this one first?
You go for it, John. Your baby, your idea.
Indeed it was. So a couple of years back, I came across this thing called bimodal IT, which there's a million and one definitions, but fundamentally it's the ability of running IT at two different speeds, i.e. waterfall, agile, or a mixture of the two. And I've been in a waterfall environment on and off for a few years, and I was struggling to get what this agile concept was. So that's when I thought, well, we need to do a presentation at the 2015 ITSM conference, and I just mooted the idea on social media with the SIG colleagues, and the feedback we got was great. And then we came up with a concept of three topics, 6 speakers, and arguing basically old school versus new school. And that's kind of how it came about, really. I mean, and then the white paper sort of just fell out almost as an afterthought, and then has gone on to this wonderful award-winning piece of work, which we've had great success with. Matt, do you want to kind of come on the back of that?
Yeah, absolutely, John. Yeah, that sums it up nicely. The other thing that helped drive it was we didn't just want to do a bog standard chalk and talk presentation with a special interest group. So there's a number of us in the SIG, and we wanted to try and get as many people involved as possible and make it interesting for the audience. So as John says, we pitched kind of 3 pairs of speakers against each other. We covered release management, service catalog driven transition, and early life support. And we pitched the old traditional style against the new agile thinking, and it went down really well at the conference, and it was fun to do as well.
That's great, thank you. And so if you can maybe just elaborate a bit more on what the speakers were talking about. So when we talk about two-speed transition and old school versus new school, what does an old school organisation look like? What does a new school organisation look like?
Great question. I don't think it fits neatly into that bucket anymore. That's probably one of the biggest lessons that I've learned on a personal professional journey out of this. But generally speaking, the old school methodology or traditional methodology was generally step by step or waterfall based. So whether that's release, project, and so on, you do a bit of discovery design bit, then you build some stuff, then you implement it, and it goes live, sequential. Agile's a little bit more, has kind of ripped up the rule book in the last sort of 15 years or so, as I'm sure many people will be aware. And it's more kind of, how do you adapt kind of Scrum techniques, fail fast, 2-week sprints, and so on. You know, iterative. Matt's a big fan of the minimal viable product, which I'm sure he'll talk about in a little while. So that's fundamentally the cultural differences. One of the things that I learned on this journey for myself when I was at the University of Nottingham is you can actually blend those approaches. So there's almost like a 3-speed, which is almost a hybrid approach, which we'll talk about in a little while. But that's fundamentally what I would see the different organisations. But the key thing behind any of the approaches, you've got to have management and grassroots buy-in. Otherwise, you're just going to be doing things and doing them half-heartedly. Matt, do you want to come on the back of that?
No, I think you summed it up nicely, John. I mean, one of the things to mention is that during the presentation, we've also done this on Bright Talk as well, so it's worth a little look up if you want to find out a little bit more about it, is we asked people to vote on what they would, which option they'd take, which flavour they'd choose, the traditional or the agile. And many of them sat on the fence because they could see value in using both at the right time.
Yeah, that was probably one of the most interesting things, just quickly off the back of that, because I've done this presentation 3 times. You know, we were relative novices at ITSM 15. We did it on Bright Talk, where we had a more international audience, and there was slightly more leanings towards Agile. And then instead of the 6 of us, there was me and Vaughan's Murphy doing it at the ITSMF Ireland conference in October of last year. And then I cheated and added, instead of old school, new school, or both, it was, do you lean this way or do you lean that sort of way? And it was interesting when you actually, one of the things that we learned is the audience don't necessarily need to fit into either camp, but we went from a load of hands being kept down as to which is the best way to, yeah, okay, I think there's some value in this. And then there's some really good interaction between the speakers as well. So if you look through the ITSMF UK Service Talk Journal, the past 2 editions have had detailed parts of that white paper in there as well.
So do you think this is a kind of a reflection of how IT does change, in that if you give people a very binary decision and say, do you do this or this, they'll go, oh, not sure, but allowing them to maybe say, well, we do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Is that how IT departments change?
I think it is, and I think particularly in this, it's almost like we're in a transition period, as in we've had the traditional stuff in place for so long now, and then we've got Agile and DevOps and bimodal coming along and challenging it, and people kind of want to be in that camp, but they're kind of a little bit reticent to leave behind the traditional what they know. And it's a case of, well, if we leave the traditional approach behind, are we going to leave all that best practice behind and, you know, take this risky agile approach? And that's kind of one of the themes we tried to tackle in the presentation in the white paper.
So we've mentioned a few things on this hangout so far, which maybe not everybody's going to be familiar with. So it's worth spending a bit of time on these, I think. So we've talked about the IT Service Management Forum, itSMF. Now, John, Matt and myself are members of the UK chapter, but itSMF is a global organisation. So if you're looking for opportunities to network with service management people in your own country or your own area, itSMF is a good place to start. And if you look at the itSMF international website, you'll see a list of the different global chapters and how you can start to get involved. But we've also talked about the SIG, the white paper, the award. So maybe John and Matt, if you can talk us through what the SIG is and what it does, the white paper, what the award was for, and just tell us a little bit about that side of what you do, because this is extra to what you do at work, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We're all volunteers. John and myself, this is something we do weirdly for fun. So if we can't get enough IT at work, we're doing some in our spare time as well. And the special interest group is ITSMF UK members who have a job or in areas of service transition. There are a number of SIGs that ITSMF has. They're just bringing in some new ones actually, so watch out for them. And it's you know, we get together and we share knowledge. We produce white papers, blogs, and other different contents. We also run specific days on topics where, you know, like almost like little mini conferences. And yeah, we're very, very active, and it's a great way to supplement your knowledge from the day job as well. John, anything to add to that?
No, I think you've summed that up nicely, Matt. It's one. I mean, just a very brief thing for me. I turned up at a SIAM transition event, which I was talking about at a conference a couple of weeks back, and it was the first time I'd ever experienced anything with the ITSMF when I was at the University of Leicester, and it was just a great way to network. Whilst I wasn't familiar with the topic at the time, then when I went to a change masterclass, which was led by Richard Horton, sort of our predecessor who ran the SIG, it was a really good shop window for the special interest group from there on, and it's kind of just, for me personally and professionally, just something I just wanted to get involved in, because you get out what you put in. The opportunities to network, meet people, increase your knowledge, and so on are opportunities you probably otherwise wouldn't get in the day job. And in some ways, when you get to meet peers across the industry who are in the same boat, it does give you some sense of reassurance. So, the last 2 or 3 years have been quite a big thing for us in terms of getting a presence out there. We're active on social media, the content and so on, which Matt has talked about. In terms of the award, just the very brief story of the two-speed life, if you like. So it came out as an idea over the summer of 2015. We did the conference, we did some feedback, then we wanted to turn it into the white paper. We worked on it, I think, between about 3 and 6 months, give or take, with the rewrites. And then we submitted it the following summer for the ITSM 16 awards, and we went to the awards dinner, just wondering, it was just nice to be considered to be a finalist. And then lo and behold, when the name goes up in lights, it's a testament to the hard work that everybody put into it, because it's not just me and Matt. There were 4 other people that wrote this. So a nod to Peter Mills, Sue Cater, Vaughan's Murphy, and Pat Bolger, who are all the co-authors and co-presenters with this. So, and since then, it's really given us impetus to then look at what we're going to do for sort of last year or tail end of last year and then into this year. So we're looking at a talk on DevOps at this year's conference, maybe a white paper that will be a sister thing for that. And we've also, at last year's conference, we went back to basics at the request of the audience as well, which was an interesting experience, where we were using the Ignite format. So again, 6 speakers, but we were pressing the bell every 30 seconds, moving slides on. So what we try to do as well is also have a bit of fun whenever we try to do these events or conferences and so on, just to keep us on our toes, and then we can become better speakers out the back of it. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of the background of the SIG and where we've gone with the award and so on.
Yeah, I just for me, the best thing about the award was, as you've said, John, it was a real collaborative effort from the 6 of us, and it was kind of really reflective of how we want the SIG to be. And obviously, I want to take this brazen opportunity to say, if you are in the UK and you do want to be involved in the SIG, then just hop onto the itSMF UK website, and there's a link with my smiley face. Just hit that button and you can get in touch, and we'd love to have you on board.
So, and I think I'm conscious we've got a global audience on this Hangout, so I think there's maybe a couple of things to draw out there, which is, if you're not in the UK, you're not an ITSMF UK member, this is maybe some inspiration for what you can do with your own chapter of the ITSMF or with your own colleagues. I know in the United States, they have the LIGs rather than the SIGs. It's the local interest groups, which are geographical rather than the special interest groups that we have in the UK. So there's maybe some inspiration there, because, John and Matt have done some fantastic things and they've won an award for that, which is something that then, helps you in your career and moves you forward. But John and Matt, just thinking about the international people who are watching this, is there an opportunity for them to access the white paper? Can they get involved with you on social media? How could they maybe kind of interact with the SIG a little bit?
Absolutely. We're on Twitter, and there's a hashtag Transition Tuesday. So every week there's an article or some top tips that goes out. And that's they're all pre-scheduled, as well as the occasional tweets when we're doing events. There is the Back to ITSM forum on Facebook, which I know there's a big international presence on there, so there is links to good resources. There's the Bright Talk presentation, which will make the link available, so there was a big international audience who did get in touch with us afterwards. As for the white paper itself, I would have to investigate whether we can make that available or not, because obviously it is copyright of the property of the ITSMF UK, but I can't see that being a problem if we were to make extracts of it available. But again, if you can contact us directly, we'll happily take that offline for you. So there's a plethora of resources out there. There's obviously ITSM crowd as well, which, you know, a nod to that. So just because you're around the world doesn't mean that the ITSM community can't give back to, you know, your learnings and so on. And we also do collaborate with other organisations outside of the ITSMF, British Computer Society being one of them. So there's I won't say there's a million and one, but there's plenty of things to work with us on. And we've also got a base camp, which we do have a couple of international members helping us out on. So if you want to get involved, collaborate, and it doesn't necessarily have to be under the banner of the ITSMF UK. It can be a global effort. But again, it's like Matt said, if you're interested, give us a shout, or if you just want us to help contribute or advise on things, more than happy to help out.
Yeah, and we're also on LinkedIn as well.
Oh yes, there is a LinkedIn discussion group.
Yeah, there's a LinkedIn group.
Take up on it. Is a bit mixed, but anybody internationally wants to join on there, you can just look us up under LinkedIn Transition SIG, and you'll find us.
Yeah, good way to get in touch with us, that LinkedIn.
So if you look for the ITSM crowd hashtag on Twitter, you'll see John and Matt's Twitter handles there as well. And from John and Matt, you can link through into the Transition SIG Twitter account as well. So lots of ways for people to get involved there. So I want to dig a little bit deeper now into the drivers, I guess, for this two-speed transition conversation. So if you would please talk to me a little bit about the organisational problems maybe, or changes in the way we work that have started this conversation. You know, why are we looking at two-speed transition now?
Okay, I'll tackle kind of my experience of where I've done the blended approach, because early life support was or the innovative approach part of the white paper was based on kind of my experience at the University of Nottingham. And the upshot is there was a project to deliver something called Flexible Desktop for the School of Computer Science. It was a brand new experience for students and so on, very short time window, and the project needed to go live over the summer, and people in the operational world didn't know much about it. So using what bits of knowledge I'd acquired, like Kanban boards and sprints and so on, I was able to work with the project manager very quickly to get the team to focus on what was the fallout of the go live. So I've been involved in getting the project into live, but what was unique about the early life support bit, what I'm used to doing is after you've done an implementation, you get a 2-week warranty period, and then the project show leaves town. What had agreed between the project, the customer, and the operations team was a 2-month early life support, and we would, for the first 2 weeks, do a very intensive sort of 15 to 30-minute daily stand-up as to what are the main issues, how do you get through the major instance, to get the service desk on the call, etc., etc. And then what we would do is then have a window of where we would fix things at the end of that 2 weeks. So if we'd found any fundamental flaws, you could then agree the maintenance period, review, and so on and so forth. So you could argue, well, is that much different to the traditional way of doing early life support? I would say it's a hybrid approach, because had I have just said rigidly, right, we've got this amount of time, and then the project team leaves town, that's going to, the amount of fires that we have to put out in our operational world, as we'll all appreciate, are quite huge. So the argument I gave on the early life support part of the two-speed transition was based on that hybrid approach. So that's one of the things that I learned, and hopefully share the benefits with other people as well.
That sounds almost DevOpsy to me, dare I say it, John?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you would do DevOps throughout rather than sort of at the end. But what's great is you can take bits and pieces of Agile, Lean, ITSM, and really it's about crowdsourcing. If you get the right people around the table for a relevant amount of time, not having loads of meetings and planning sessions and so on, but working smarter, not harder, is probably the thing that I've learned the most through that particular project. And that's why I think it's different to creating an early life support package and a big loads of documentation and not throwing cats over the fence and so on, although, you know, there's never an excuse for doing that.
And
Matt,
was that something then that changed the way the organisation dealt with release in future and with transitions in future?
For this particular platform, yes. There were other software projects that started to work in a more agile way, but the the different parts of the organization weren't necessarily as agile experienced as say I was. So I was able to go into more of the agile driven projects and start to put in little bits of requirements on the Scrum boards and so on, so we could get the SLAs, so we could get that minimum viable product sooner, and not just have this project manager show up and go, I want to go live tomorrow, and the change manager go, not on your Nelly. So it was an organic process, but I'm obviously no longer with the University of Nottingham, but I believe they are starting to, that I think I'd like to think that bore some fruit and put down some roots for the agile culture that's starting to develop within the higher education space.
And Matt, if I can bring you in at this point, what do you think's driving this? Is it about the need for speed, or what's going on in organisations that are making them look at change again?
I think it's the way that we as people outside of work, we get IT. I mean, smartphones and cloud services and all those things have just absolutely changed the way people expect how frequently they get updates, how quickly they can get stuff. And I think as kind of good at we're getting this demand from people, and we're kind of having to play a little bit of catch up to try and get in that same kind of this kind of quick delivery of services, quick and frequent delivery of services. I mean, I looked at in the 2-speed, my topic was release management, and I brought to the party what we do at Grant Thornton. I mean, we're not a complete true agile shop. We're kind of on our way. So our approach to release management now is, rather than the traditional waterfall approach, we are doing a kind of an agile approach where we're going through a stage, because obviously many people think that if you're doing agile, you're not whatever, which is of course not true. We go through an alpha stage where we deliver a minimum viable product, which earlier something that you deliver to the customer that delivers them feedback loops. We then progress into a beta stage where we give it to more people and then get it to production. So rather than the customer waiting 6 months or something to see something, we're giving them something limited in features of it, but something they can use really, really early. And that certainly means that we can develop and release better products taking that approach.
And what does this mean for kind of the traditional service management processes, things like change management? If somebody's in a change manager role at the moment, how do they need to adapt?
This was something I was talking about at a guest slot at the CSI SIG in London a few weeks back, actually, where they'd asked me to do a bit of a talk on change and DevOps. I think the short answer is change managers, particularly old school mentality, are going to have to get out from behind the desk, frankly, and go and learn some of this stuff. It sounds like common sense, but if I used to be of an old school mindset of change management. You must fill in bits of paper within a certain time, go to CAB, get the approvals, blah, blah, blah. Whereas now it's a case of just have a conversation, or maybe at least raise a change in advance and so on. But you need to start to understand that there are different languages, different mindsets and so on, because ultimately, if you do everything last minute, that this goes for project managers and agile teams as well as the change function, then all it's going to do is create irritation for the change manager, because they're having to run around filling lots of bits of paper and help the team out. Ditto with the project team, because they're up against tight deadlines, but ultimately the customer suffers. So if you've kind of got that blended approach of customer and dare I say dev and ops, then I think you're gonna start out on the right foot. So start smallly. Just go out, have a few conversations, get people to show you what their burn down charts, what their sprint plans are, and then at least you can say, well, if you raise this change record now and then just fill in bits at a time, or whatever your approach fits your organization, then you shouldn't have the big surprise at the end where everybody wants to go live tomorrow. So I think there's a cultural thing there. I think your process longer term doesn't necessarily have to change, but it probably just needs to flex. So you might have a different type of change for a particular product or software, because like Matt says, you don't think Facebook are going to be waiting 6 months for CAB to approve an update to their website or their app. They're doing it daily, weekly, and so on. And I think that's true of a lot of organizations now. But you don't necessarily chuck all the best practice out the window, because if you're doing something really big and complicated, then that's not to say the traditional approach and checks and balances, building Wembley Stadium as an extreme example, you're going to need to make sure that you've got the foundations there. So again, I think hybrid's a good thing, but I think change managers, the short answer is you need to go and learn some of this stuff and learn to be a little bit flexible and not just beat people up with a stick if they've not filled in the right bit of paper. It's a two-way street.
Is when we talk about this hybrid approach, is hybrid in itself a transition? Are we ultimately moving towards a fully agile transition capability, or do you think there'll always be space for that hybrid approach?
I think there will be. I think you've got to make sure you assure quality. And that's what ITIL and the other best practice frameworks do. It's just a case of making sure you still, there may be some balance against speed and risk, but as like John's just been talking about, in terms of like changing your change process, we still do a best practice change process. We try to be very agile. We've got ISO 20000 service management standard certification, and we've kind of changed how we do the change process by trying to say, well, what doesn't add value here? A delay of a week while you wait for cab authorization, that doesn't add you any value. So we're looking at we've looked at different ways of approving things, maybe doing those electronically, but also at the same time ensuring that we're getting that quality through at the same time. So having those conversations, having maybe a different approach to change authorization where we're doing like a quality check and then there's the sign off. So rather than it taking to the cab and saying, yeah, off you go, come back and we'll discuss it again. It's we're kind of getting it in place, ready to authorize, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a sensible move, and one thing that with any new way of working, it's always important to emphasize is this isn't a case of throwing out everything that an organisation is doing. And I think, Matt, you've just summed it up quite nicely there in just looking for the things that aren't adding any value and trying to continually improve what you're doing. That's a much less disruptive approach for an organisation. So we're coming to the end of our time now. That's gone really quickly today. That's been a really interesting conversation. Yeah. I've lost you there, Matt, I'm afraid.
Yeah. So I'm at the mercy of their Wi-Fi. I was just going to point about adding value. My boss at work, he has a very simple three question rule that he has, which is something we call it the Stephen test. Does it add value? If it doesn't, people aren't going to do it, or we can't implement it. And is it agile? As in, can we get something in place and then increment it, iterate it? And I just think that's a really, really set of questions to test, along the lines of best practice versus agile. It's a good way of evolving your processes.
So I heard then, does it add value? Is it agile?
Yeah.
And I think I missed a question.
Is it simple?
Keep it simple. They're words to live by, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Stephen test may well go down in history.
Hopefully it won't go to his head, so let's rename it.
Maybe he'll get an award for that. Okay, so we're at the end of our time. I would like to say a huge thank you to Matt and to John for talking to us today. Please do make use of the resources that we've mentioned, the Bright Talk, the LinkedIn groups, interact on Twitter. The service management community is one of the friendliest and most supportive that I've ever had the pleasure to work with. So I think this is a good opportunity to get involved if this is your particular area of interest. So thank you, John. Thank you, Matt. Thank you to everyone who's joined us. And we will see you on the next episode of the ITSM Crowd. Thank you.
Thank you.